not we all, that's always a great way to start a sentence if you want to get in trouble. Some of us enjoy puzzles and we enjoy questions. But I do think most of us really enjoy answers. And there's so much that we encounter in the world that is a puzzle or a conundrum that has no answer. And that is infuriating. And one of the things I love about mystery as a genre is that there is this convolution that is intimidating at the outset, but if you persist, if you continue and you dig, there is an elegant answer at the end that makes everything kind of like snap into relief. There is the feeling of reward. There is the consolation that maybe the universe is not meaningless and we're all just spiraling towards heat death. Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
What is up, everybody? Adrian M. Gibson here. You're listening to episode 72 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. Joining me, as always, my co-host, the Chewie to my Han Solo, the Joker to my Commander Shepard, my dear MJ Kuhn. How are you, MJ?
Hello, I'm lovely. How are you, Adrian?
Doing peachy keen this evening. Breezy, as it were. If you want to support MJ and her work, her name is right there. Take that, Michael Sullivan. You can pick up Among Thieves. It's an excellent book full of heists, full of thieves, full of hatchets, not horrors, but it is an amazing time, and you are going to love it. You're going to
There's
really...
some horrors, to be fair.
True. Okay, yeah, so horrors too. Also, the sequel, Thick as Thieves, is out now, so you can pick them both up and enjoy this duology from start to finish. As well, a quick note for anyone out there listening or watching: the official SFF Addicts Patreon and merch store are live, so check the links in the description to support what we do here. Also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app, and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And now, joining us once again is the most bodacious basement dweller in the land, who's no longer in a basement, author of the just released The Hexologists, Josiah Bancroft. How you doing, good sir?
Hello. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Happy to have you here, buddy. Happy to have you here. Heads up, this is part 2 of our 2-part chat with Josiah. So I recommend checking out part 1 to get to know him better and to laugh your ass off and have a great time. Today, though, we're getting cryptic as we investigate a masterclass on writing mysteries, and in an unusual turn of events, twist. Josiah and I will be tackling this masterclass topic together, which I'm very, very excited about. Yeah, we got this.
Indeed.
I'm just going to pop that out there. Mahahaha. All right, well, just to start off, Josiah, do you remember the first time a fictional mystery caught your private eye?
Yes, I do. It was absolutely the king of the genre, Conan Doyle and his Hound of the Baskervilles. I think I found it at the library when I was 12 or 13, and I didn't sleep for a couple of weeks after I found it because I found it terrifying. Just
stay away from
absolutely
dogs for a while.
Scarred for life.
I know. I already was like a little iffy on dogs, and that was like, all right, I guess we're done. But I mean, I was just so enthralled because, of course, it does this great job of like giving you the red herring and the sort of misdirection, sets up the eerie atmosphere. Ever since then, I was definitely like into the genre of mystery, and I never looked back. But what about you?
Well, mine is, I'm a kid of the 90s. I was born in 91, and
I like how you're already hedging.
The first one that truly captured me, where I can think back on it and be like, this was a mystery and I was fully on board, was Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Pet Detective.
And the sequel, When Nature Calls. Both of them, I just, I don't know, man. I just really loved it. It was that mix of like Jim Carrey, Canadian humor with a lot of... This is the thing. It's like it was playing with so many tropes, and I had no idea what those tropes were.
Yeah.
And it was
it's like a Mad magazine. Like you're just like flipping through it and you're like, I get like 2 of these. Oh, it's like lots of Nixon stuff. Who is Nixon?
But the best part is it's like I don't know anything about football, like laces out or any of that shit.
Right.
But the fun part for me has been to continue my journey and then to look back on it so fondly. And I'm going to be so excited the day that I show it to my sons. I'm going to be like, we're going to watch the greatest detective film in all of history. They're going to be like, what the fuck is
They'll
this?
be like, what, Dad?
Yeah, exactly. But for me, it is just pure nostalgia and pure comedy. And it is playing with things that I did not understand at the time, but now I can fully appreciate the genius that was Jim Carrey in Ace Ventura.
See, I didn't know you were born in 91 because I was born in 1879. And that's why I picked Conan Doyle. If I had known we were doing the 90s, I would have picked something different. I could go on the X-Files or something.
You're like, dang it, I would have blended in
1891,
better.
man. 1891. Come on.
1891. All right, now that we've established
There's
that you guys are
Josiah
both
just picking up fucking
ageless
time rags.
vampires. Let's dig into your favorites, though. What about it? I mean, Adrian, you mentioned a little bit about playing with some tropes, some of which you didn't understand at the time. But Josiah, like, what about your entryway to mystery? What kept you turning those pages? What kept your eyes glued? Do you remember?
Oh, absolutely. Like what encapsulated it's the best is like The Usual Suspects. It's the lineup of possible, suspects, the cretins who could be responsible for this crime. That it's just so captivating to me as a reader and as a viewer. I loved The Suspects. I feel like that's the hardest thing to introduce as a writer because, it's actually pretty elaborate to come up with like a list of compelling suspects with backstories that like intersect with the story in a way that is convincing, but also organic and still plausible. So maybe this is the person who did a thing. But whenever I see it, I just find it to be like, it's a ballet of characterization. And so for me, it is the cavalcade of suspects that always gets me hooked.
I always love that because then I feel like too for me, like when I'm reading a mystery, part of the like fun and the part that makes me not be able to like stop or put it aside or stop watching or whatever, if regardless of the medium, is that I feel like if it's a well-written mystery, I feel like all the pieces are there, and if I just pay enough attention, I'm gonna solve this bitch before the characters, right? And I almost never do, but but like I feel like that promise, right, that you could is one of the things for me at least that makes a mystery so compelling. I know.
Do you like to watch like the police procedurals on TV and like after the first act could be like, it's obviously the record producer. He did it. He killed them all.
I will say I got my wisdom teeth out like a long time ago and I binge watched all of Bones.
Ooh,
when I got my wisdom teeth out.
Stuff.
And I got really good at figuring out who was going to be.
You got into the head of the writer's room.
Yeah, well, because I watched like 60 episodes zonked out on my couch. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you're doing it every week, it kind of reduces the possibility that you're
you
so
return
on the ball.
To your life.
Yeah.
You are no longer Temperance Brennan.
Yeah. But if you binge it, you're just like, oh shit.
You're in her head the whole time, baby.
These bones, baby. That was a good show. It was
a good show.
Low-key forgot about that show until this instant, and now I kind of want to rediscover
and also kind of like an endearing like relationship. There was some positivity 100%. There.
Yeah. Like a little found family. Yep.
Oh, that was a good show.
That's good.
Oh, man. Okay, but that kind of touches on something that I wanted to discuss, which is why mysteries and detectives and murders and crimes and this kind of stuff are so compelling for audiences. Like for me, I think, MJ, what you touched on in terms of the audiences, the
participation almost.
The participation, but the minute possibility that they can solve the murder before or the crime or whatever, they can solve it before the sleuth or before the main character. I think that is the kind of thing that is so enticing, where it's like, you're engaging your brain to a certain degree along with your imagination. And so it's the combination of those two things together that, depending on what medium it is, it's like if you're reading or if you're watching or whatever, it's just a little bit more than a lot of the brainless shit that we have at our fingertips these days. But Josiah, what do you think?
No, I completely agree. I agree. I think that like not we all. That's always a great way to start a sentence if you want to get in trouble. No, some of us enjoy puzzles and we enjoy questions, but I do think most of us really enjoy answers. And there's so much that we encounter in the world that is a puzzle or a conundrum that has no answer, and that is infuriating. And one of the things I love about mystery as a genre is that there is this convolution that is intimidating at the outset, but if you persist, if you continue and you dig, there is an elegant answer at the end that makes everything kind of like snap into relief. There is the feeling of reward. There is the consolation that maybe the universe is not meaningless and we're all just spiraling towards heat death. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Not all just
that's
black
good
hole
stuff.
information just being sucked up.
Exactly.
Getting ready to be archived.
That's what we're all waiting for, is just the eventual
archival by the Reapers.
but first flattened.
Yeah.
Really
Flattened first.
really flattened. Yes.
That's how the information lasts for so long.
Pancaked
really
and
fat.
then archived.
Yeah.
I like
Yes.
it. You know what? They're preserving us like flowers. You try that.
Aw,
That's so pretty.
that's a really positive
so much
spin on it,
better.
MJ.
Thank
Glass
you.
half full.
Oh.
I'm here to bring the positivity
girl.
today. It's
Go,
unusual
girl.
for me.
Oh man.
But do you guys think that like audiences or readers, whatever, people in general, like our attraction to mystery, our taste for the types of mystery stories, the different subgenres of mysteries that have emerged, how do you guys see that having evolved over time? Or do you think it's like kind of timeless?
I mean, I definitely think it's a reflection of the times, because it's like going back to the origins of mysteries, in the mid to late 1800s, where humans during industrialization are congregating in cities. And it's like I've heard so many times about human beings are never meant to be in communities of over 150, 200 or whatever. And you just cram us all into a fucking sardine can of a city, and it's just messy business, And
I would like to interject to say that I cannot imagine a worse hell than being in a community of 100 people. That to me is a crime waiting to happen. There's a mystery, someone's been murdered, and we know Josiah did it.
Yeah.
The thing, I did it like 100 people. Oh my God.
And then you get excommunicated and you go die off in the jungle or whatever,
Yeah, well, and that's what I deserve. I'm sorry, continue.
That's your fate.
100 people? Really? Who's saying that?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
No, think about it. They could like raise your daughter and you have to do like minimal work, but then you help out eventually when someone else has a kid,
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are nice things.
It's all give and take, man. It's all about giving and receiving. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's in the genes, man.
I don't know. I'm saying for me, like the city appeals, like the anonymity, the melding into the crowd.
We all know
that makes me seem like
we all
sort
know
of
you like to be an enigma, so it's all good. Yeah.
Yes.
But with the congregation of cities, it's like the frequency of interaction increases, the frequency and the potential for crimes and negative interactions increases, but then it's also introduces the idea of police and the idea of constables and people who are having to watch over the city. And then it's like the birth of the detective is so interesting because it reflects so much upon the time of industrialization in England and in the United States, where these cities are growing, where almost the combination of the setting and the character took shape because of the reality that people were living in. And so it's like you had lots of like I can't remember what they're called, like dime novels and stuff like that, where it's like shorter
The
pieces.
Penny
The
Dreadfuls.
Penny Dreadfuls and all this different kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Penny Dreadfuls was the one I was trying to think of, where the format is cheaper and it's more consumable for people who are from a lower class. And so the life that they were living was reflected in the stories that they were reading. And this progresses over time as different subgenres took shape. It's like the development of film noir, the development of the hard-boiled detective is very much a reflection of the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. The eventual rise of film as a medium really changed the game for different subgenres of mystery. And that's where you have more film noir. That's where you have more, what is it? Combinations of thrillers and different kinds of things mixing into it. And then eventually it's
Yeah.
like you have crime thrillers and police procedurals, and television is where police procedural really became a thing with CSI, with NCIS, with Bones. Shout out to Bones.
Yeah.
Bones, man. It's all about Bones. But I think this is really a case of there's a Canadian theorist named Marshall McLuhan who he has a very famous quote of "the medium is the message." And in the case of mystery, I very much feel that the medium is a reflection of the time that it is being made in, and the societies that it is speaking about, and the people who are consuming it. And it's all this intermingled relationship. And I find it really beautiful that mystery of all things, Josiah, you're saying like people love puzzles and they like questions, but they love answers. It's kind of like mystery as a genre is the perfect encapsulation of what humans crave in stories.
Oh yeah, and I think like you're exactly right. I think that what mystery does and its evolution does really clearly is mark the change in societal and cultural anxiety. Like the thing that we are dreading the most at that moment is usually at the heart of a mystery. And so if you look like the mysteries of today, and compared to the mysteries of yesterday, you'll see like really a fingerprint of what we were concerned about and fearful of as a culture. What I think on top of that is really like interesting to consider is that mystery owes so much to the emergence of the Age of Enlightenment and the appearance of the scientific method.
Yep.
Because before that, when there was a question
Forensics.
of like who did it,
man.
it could be gremlins. It was probably demons, and you get a lot of like
It was
Scarlet
that
Letter
Josiah,
sort of stuff.
that Bancroft down the street with his like demon
Exactly.
cult.
His shifty eyes, he was the one. So I mean, mystery like is dependent upon the culture for its substance of what is making us filled with dread, but required the emergence of the scientific method of the Age of Enlightenment to give us an answer that wasn't just maybe it's the gods, maybe she's a witch, maybe we should burn her, and that to me is because then there is an answer that is in some way quantifiable, maybe not accurately. I mean, there's all sorts of bunk science that has emerged and then been disgraced in the last like 30 or 40 years, even in criminal like investigations. So we know that like, just because you put the label science on it does not mean it's like the same thing as truth. There's stuff that when people were comparing handwriting and just being like, and we can put this person in jail because of handwriting, it took us a while to be like, maybe that's not great, So there's a process of development with the scientific method, but generally the scientific method is more reliable than just does this person weigh more than a duck? Like should we burn them? So I think that's an improvement.
I think that.
Just a little improvement.
Just a little bit. But I think the fact that science is fallible in certain ways, even though it's not massive compared to what criminal investigations and mysteries would be without it.
Superstition is worse.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
But
Science is better.
the thing is that mysteries are inherently fallible in and of themselves. So to have a method that is not perfect creates, in the sense of storytelling, tension, where the fallibility of the scientific method in combination with the fallibility of people and the fallibility of
The investigator.
the investigator and everything really works in conjunction to be like, you know, I think more engaging to a reader as opposed to, okay, well, this investigation took 5 minutes because our science is so perfect and our
Right. Well, I was going to
technology
say
is
it
so
adds
advanced and blah, blah, blah.
different levels of obscurity, right? It obscures the answer to the mystery, and is probably fun to play with as a writer, right? That you can throw those false leads that seem to be backed by this thing, but then, just kidding, it's not.
Well, and it's also one reason that I set my mystery before phones or phones, like cell phones and like, you know, real like modern forensics. Like to grapple with the reality of those things, I would need a degree. And I stopped studying a long time ago. Like I'm just like coasting on high school at this point. So I'm not going to go back and learn about like all the new forensic stuff. And so, you know, I can understand the puzzles and mysteries of, you know, 60, 70, 80 years ago. But I feel like now it is pretty complicated. You know, like the sort of DNA stuff and all that. I mean, that's different. Although that gets kind of used as like the you know, answer to all things sometimes, and I think poorly written procedurals are like, well, we got the DNA, he's guilty,
Right.
and then that's it. That's over.
No, but they got a what 25-minute time frame, even less than that with all the commercials and stuff. So they got to wrap that shit up in a nice bow.
I like it. Yeah, well, I feel like, I know it's not like a traditional mystery, but I do think, Josiah, you got to explore the idea of mystery, as well as mystery subplots quite a bit in Sendlin of Sins and the sequels. But what made you want to pursue like a more quote unquote traditional, like Holmesian type mystery in the Hexologists?
Bald hubris. Just stupidity, hubris. No, I thought it'd be fun. I thought it'd be a challenge. I like to like undertake things that I'm not confident in, because it gives me an opportunity to embarrass myself in front of more people. Like I don't want to do that. Like I could do it in my closet, but why not do it in front of a lot of people? And it's honestly because I've always really loved mystery. I've watched every mystery show I think that's been ever made. I like the boring ones too. Like I'm like a Midsummer Murders kind of guy, but like I'll do the X-Files. Like I like it all. I mean, I'm a guy who just likes cozy mysteries. I have to say the gritty mysteries, the sort of mysteries where like, all right, and here's the hand of a child. I'm like, no, this is gonna be tough for me. I don't really like the sort of like, you know, ones that start off with body parts. I watch them to learn because I'm a student of the genre. But you know, I've always liked, I think for me, my jam was the PBS show Mystery that had the classic Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot. David Suchet as Hercule Poirot is my touchstone for my current series, both in the style of that show and just his beautiful understanding of humanity, his prickliness, his oddities, all these things about his character is just wonderful, and how it's realized on the screen. Of course, I also read the books, but you know, it's you know, I write and I'm very influenced by the stuff that is like visual as well. So yeah, I think that yeah, you know. Those series, like the mystery series, really were impactful.
Yeah. Well, and so was there like a steep learning curve to get into writing it? How difficult, easy, fun? Was it frustrating, or like was it? Do you feel like you'd taken in so much content already in the genre that you really were prepared to step onto the stage?
Yes, that's the vanity coming in again. I thought I was really ready for it, and I started writing the book, and I realized about like 50 pages in, like, oh, this is going really poorly. I do need, in fact, to write an actual outline. And so, like, for the Books of Babel, I had, like, you know, sketches, ideas, like notions, a couple of, like, you know, pages that I jotted down. I got the rough idea. That was not going to fly with this mystery. And it's not like, this is not a Rubik's Cube of a mystery. This is a pretty simple mystery. And it took a lot of work for me because I'm not super smart. So I had to like go through a lot of outlining, to put all these little different pieces together, foreshadowing, the different false leads and red herrings, etc. It was something that I had to rely on the process of planning more than I have in the past, because I've always been sort of more of a, hey, let's see what happens. And then it's not going to work with this mystery.
Yeah, well, I feel like it goes, back to like when we had our chat with Chuck Wendig. He said every book is its own beast, right? So it's like, just because this process worked really well for this book, this genre, this particular mindset I was in when I was writing this project. And I think that's great to, think about as a writer, to be flexible with your process and go, okay, just because I'm usually a discovery writer, if it's not working this time, doesn't mean that it's not gonna, I can't write this book. Maybe I just need to change my approach a little bit. So Adrian, I want to pop over to you, because I don't know how many of our listeners know this, that you are currently working on your debut novel. I got the chance to read the first chapter for beta read.
Josiah
good.
mentioned Kids' Hands. Sorry, buddy, but
yeah, I know.
Oh no!
At the beginning,
no, is this a kid's hand thing?
Not necessarily a hand, not a hand.
It's a little dark. But
yeah.
So Adrian's book is going to be, this first book is going to be a mystery. What made you decide? Why did you decide to start writing a mystery? What made you pick that for your debut?
I like Josiah. I love them. I just adore mysteries, but I've come at it from a very different angle over the course of my life. I think, not growing up in the 1800s, there's just a different kind of era of mysteries that really surrounded me while I was growing up, and a lot of it came from television and film. So X-Files is something that one of my older brothers watched, and he introduced me to it at far too young an age, and I would have terrible nightmares. So it's just, I think, kind of a latchkey kind of way of growing up, where having three older brothers, they introduced me to things that my parents would definitely not have agreed to. Were it the case that they were like, hey, you want to watch a movie with your brothers? Go ahead. And they end up deciding to watch like Seven or something like that, So I had a very early introduction to things that I would put more into the crime thriller category, into the police procedural, into the science fiction kind of mystery hybrid, that kind of thing. Seven is one of those movies that has just stuck with me forever, and every time I go back and watch that movie, it just hits me in such a visceral way, and at the same time, I'm captivated and I cannot look away, even though so much of it is just disgusting or horrifying, or the way that it deals with human nature is terrifying. I love it so much. Josiah,
I will say, terrible date movie.
Oh, definitely. Nobody should take
Didn't know.
Yeah. Never take
Terrible
anyone on a
date
date.
Now you know.
To David Fincher.
Last time we hung out, that was it. That was the beginning of that relationship. So,
hey, you're really cute. Want to go watch Seven with me? It's like,
I didn't do my research. I didn't know.
You did. Well, see, now we've warned our listeners. Hey, listeners out there that are in the dating realm, don't invite your first date over to watch Seven.
Yeah. Or Zodiac, or like any of those movies. But I think for me, the big influence has always been the more sort of cerebral crime thrillers that involve things like serial killers, or murders that are a bit more horrific, and maybe that speaks to how like I come across as super cheery in this podcast, but deep inside I am just full of fucked up
shit. Just child's hands all the way down,
all over the place. But it was kind of entering into this world that I've created. It's an interconnected shared world called the Fungal Verse, and this was one of the first stories that came to my mind alongside Spore City, which is the next book that I'll be putting out next year. So it'll be Mushroom Blues and then Spore City, sort of as two launching points within this world, each starting their own respective series. And so Mushroom Blues is just, I love police procedurals. I love crime thrillers. I just get wrapped up in things like gangster movies and The Godfather or Casino and all this different kind of stuff. So it's kind of like blending all those things together, all these films and TV shows and books that have really inspired me, and combining that with a setting that feels really unique to me, but is also reflective of a period in history that I think kind of avoids what you were mentioning, Josiah, about technology, where it's set in a secondary world analog to post-World War II Japan, where it was occupied by America, but in this case, the occupation by this fictional country of another country and their capital city kind of uses post-war as a way to skirt around certain technological things, where it almost feels like an analog to like the late 1990s, where technology was at this weird turning point where it's like, yeah, there are cell phones, but not everyone has them. And there are,
big.
and there are certain types of technology, but not everyone has access to them, or they're not that reliable or that convenient. You can't lug this shit around all the time. So I kind of skirted that in this book because it is so mystery focused, whereas Spore City has a mystery in it, but it's set in the future and it's more cyberpunky and with a lot more biotechnology and that kind of thing. But for this one, to have that mystery there as a centerpiece, I was like, I need to figure out a way to avoid so many of these potential pitfalls and like you, Josiah, I was like, I like really need to outline this thing for it to make sense and get that foreshadowing in there, get those clues sprinkled in ways that are both enticing but also provide questions and small answers along the way that lead towards the climax.
Yeah, I don't know if like you felt the same thing that I did at the end of like writing your novel. I felt humbled and more appreciative of the people that I had been dismissive of in the past.
Yeah.
And because it really is, it's an art unto itself, and it is difficult, and it's fiddly and exact, and if you get it wrong, then what you have is embarrassing. And so it's tough. And so I mean, I think that we are both like great appreciators of the genre. But like one of the things I've learned is admiring a thing is not the same as mastering it. And so like I feel like I learned a lot from drafting the first mystery. When I sat down to write the second one, I was like, oh, we got to start all over again. Like it's a question of reinvention every time.
That's the same thing with me, man, because I'm pulling up Bancroft and writing a 4-book series with this one, but each one is more or less like a standalone mystery.
Ooh,
thanks for the inspiration.
I like it.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm getting excited now.
Ew,
well, I like it. So
books.
let's talk about we've talked a little bit about foreshadowing. We've talked a little bit about the trail of clues and all of these things, all of these touchstones of a mystery, right? Let's dig into those mystery essentials. So for each of you, and we'll start with Josiah on this one, but like what are some key elements of a good mystery? Like when you're building your outline, like what building blocks did you make sure that you were like, oh my God, I definitely need to make sure that I have this piece of the puzzle or it all falls apart?
For me, I mean, yes, they're like you have to have a lot of we talk about the suspects, but I think like for me, I also like to have a variety of characters. I think it's easy when you are writing a mystery to fall into kind of like a garden mystery where everyone essentially like it's the same character with the same background, and it's pretty milquetoast. It's not exciting. And so you want to move. I wanted to move my characters and my sets into very diverse spots, both socially and culturally in the background, their history, so that there is this dynamic that you can't just get from like a stage production sounds like that. But it's not like Clue, where everyone shows up and there's this sort of like very contained sort of. And I love Clue. I didn't mean to
And locked
besmirch
room
it. I
mysteries can be pulled
apologize.
off very
Yeah,
well.
right. But it's a
I
specific
I
type, and it's not
apologize.
all the
Yes,
mysteries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's great. Yes, but like what I was trying to do was a little different, and so like for me, it really was. I wanted to go to an abandoned military hospital. I wanted to go to the sort of burned out projects, but I also wanted to go to the highfalutin parties and the high rises, and I want to go to the library and so like for me, like creating sort of a tension of anticipation. Um, Variety, diversity is important.
I completely agree with that in the sense that, I've done something similar in my book where, you have this post-war city and there are bombed out neighborhoods. There are people where there are areas of the city where there are tent cities and refugees.
Yeah,
There are areas of the city that are military occupied, and it has essentially become like, this is where the military base is, or this is the headquarters for the police, or this is the headquarters for the military government that is occupying. And so you have these different locales, but that allows you to use the setting and the atmosphere to really evoke the kind of mood that you want to create, but at the same time, like you said, like have those characters that are reflective of different strata of society, that they give a more well-rounded picture of what this particular setting is like. And at the same time, the setting will influence the characters and the characters will influence the setting, and that will influence the
yeah,
mystery. I feel like if people can really get hooked into a captivating setting and a captivating cast of characters who, in and of themselves, present mystery based on the fact of where do they come from, what are their motives, how do they
hmm
play into the lives of the main character, and all these different facets that can influence the mystery at its core. And at the same time, it's like they can still have their own shit going on, you know?
yeah, yeah. What you're talking about is so important. Like we don't talk about mood enough with mystery, and so much of mystery is mood,
Yep.
and like so much of that like kind of taps into like the ghost story tradition, like the spooky
Edgar
campfire
Allan Poe,
vibe.
man. Edgar Allan Poe is kind of like
Yes,
one of the
yeah,
the forefathers of
a
mystery.
luminary of the
Yeah.
genre. Yeah, you can't get like past. Well, you shouldn't discount mood and setting and tone, like you're talking about. Like those things are essential, and I feel like they can't carry the day. At some point, people are like, "All right, you got to stop voguing in the shadows. You got to come out here and like show us something." But there's a lot to be said for just the temper of like the moment.
Yeah, because that world building will affect the way that the protagonist and obviously this is a really essential pillar is like the sleuth, the detective, the main character. They are the lens through which we see this world. But if that world is weak, then what that character is doing and the way that they're interacting with that world is not going to do them justice. It's like these things have to work in conjunction, and you can have a really solid main character, a really awesome POV. But if the world that they're in feels boring, and if the characters that they're interacting with feel boring, then the mystery is going to be boring and the
Yeah,
reader will put it down,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
It's very true. Very true.
Yeah. So it's like for me, yeah, it's kind of like the really essential foundation comes down to having the compelling mystery, and you can set that up with a strong hook, whether that's the first line, the first page, the first chapter. But a lot of it comes down.
The first like 400 pages. Like sometimes you don't get some
And
mystery.
whatever.
I mean, yeah, it could be like I mean, come on, let's not rush it. Let's not
Yeah.
rush it. This mystery could start like next
Yeah,
book.
but that also depends on the that also depends on the subgenre too. It's like
It
there are
does. It
slow
does.
burn mysteries, but there are also
Oh
more
yeah.
like what I'm writing where it's like crime thriller and you're kind of getting thrust into it. So, for any authors out there who are writing mysteries, what I would recommend is think about the kind of mystery that you're writing think about the audience that you're writing to and the expectations that they have based on the mysteries that they've read in the past. This isn't as formulaic as something like romance. And no offense to romance authors, but there are a lot of romance authors out there who are making a ton of money, self-pubbing, what have
Yeah,
you,
well, it's
because
the audience
they
is looking for the
exactly
formula, and
they
it's a
work to a
staple, yeah.
formula and they work for an audience who is expecting that formula.
And the magic is
Yeah,
reinventing the formula.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mystery has a lot of flexibility, but you have to know which sort of subgenre, which sort of facet of that scope you are kind of working in. Just like pinpoint that and think, am I writing noir? Am I writing hard boiled? You know, am I writing a cozy mystery, or am I writing a slow burn mystery? Am I writing something that's more Holmesian? Am I writing something that's more crime thriller or police procedural, or something that is a serial killer kind of cerebral suspense novel like Silence of the Lambs? It's like you really have to understand where you're coming from in order to give the reader certain setups, the way that you deliver the hook, the way that the mystery is presented, the way that you introduce your main character, the way that the character interacts with the setting and the cast and the culprits, and how they pick up the clues. Like you're saying, Josiah, how it's like you wanted to send your character, you wanted to send Iz and Warren to different places, not just because of the ways that they can, you know, see different strata of society and the different people that are there, but also because of the ways in which you can infuse clues into
Oh
those
yes,
characters and into those settings. I think that's really, really important too.
absolutely, completely agree.
Well, I
Yeah.
wanna dive into that a little bit more because one thing that, and I mean, I haven't even written a mystery, but even just, like, writing the, like, little
Yet,
mystery yet,
yet,
No, but I
someday
feel like so
maybe.
many books have mysteries in
But
them. It's
that's what
just
I was
not
gonna say, the
necessarily
mystery
explicitly,
element, I think,
yeah,
exists in, like, pretty much every book,
pretty
even if
much
it is
everything.
not a
Yeah.
mystery. Like,
Yeah.
there's always something to be uncovered. If not, then why are people reading it? But something I always struggle with, even in, like, the normal non-mystery books I'm writing, is how do you avoid giving away too much too soon? Or giving away too little and then making the mystery answer feel like it came out of nowhere in a bad way, right? Like, what maybe it's down to pacing, maybe it's down to foreshadowing. Like, what's the secret sauce in how you guys kind of sprinkle your little clues around?
Josiah,
Go ahead,
I just
Josiah.
spoke for
oh,
a while. You go,
oh,
buddy.
uh, I like to introduce reasonable assumption. Like a character makes a reasonable assumption based on the information they're given, so that the reader can be like, "Oh, that makes sense." That they would assume that, and then you can build to like new discoveries that change their assumptions. But I think that like what makes like a mystery sort of like build is the slow unschooling of a story. And so there's like a hidden story, a story that you want to tell, and a story that has to be discovered by your investigator. And so at the heart of mystery is the story that must be told, that is being withheld, and it has to be mined or otherwise uncovered by your detective. And so there's all these questions of like technology and structure, but ultimately it's the hidden story. And so the thing that I think you have to modulate, you have to, as the writer, like you have to kind of like figure out how you want to reveal and withhold is when you introduce certain major parts of the story. And so in my own work, that's sort of how I broke it down. Like these are the revelations of this person's story that make a difference to the mystery, and here are how I will reveal them. Here is how they will be discovered by the detective. So very basically, it is the untold story that has to be mined.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that. Because it's the you're kind of telling two stories at once. You're telling the story that is being perceived by the character, being perceived by the reader as the character experiences it, and then the story that is underneath the surface that you as the writer know because you're a maniacal shit who's crafting this twisty,
We all are.
just
That's putting it mildly.
mind-bending thing. But I think that is the basis for which you can control the flow of information. Because if you have that in the back of your head and you know how things are going to play out, you can control how the clues are handed out. I like the way that you framed it, Josiah, in terms of like assumption, and the way that the investigator has to assume things based on the information that they receive and based on what technology they have available to them and how that information can be processed within the context of the world and then by the POV and then by the reader. And then that's how you control, I'm going to drop like red herrings here. I'm going to drop some twists here. I'm going to foreshadow this. I'm going to potentially foreshadow this in a misleading way. But that all comes down to how you control the narrative momentum. And if you want to have good pacing, and I mean good pacing in the sense of knowing your subgenre, knowing who you're writing toward. It's like good pacing for a cozy mystery is very different than pacing from a crime thriller. So it's like understanding how you want to pace it and the way that you introduce clues. I think all of that is what keeps a mystery cohesive. And for me, cohesion is like the huge thing for mysteries. Because once a mystery stops feeling so cohesive is once it starts to go off the rails. And if it continues to be less cohesive and it continues to go off the rails, that's when the reader gets confused. That's when they lose interest. That's more likely a possibility for them to put the book down. So it's like
that's when they start asking their own questions.
Yeah, and it's like you want
like, and you don't
be
want
like a puppeteer, and you want to
and they're like, well, why aren't they over here? Why aren't they doing that thing?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh no, I'm in charge here.
Pay
and,
no attention
yeah,
to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. Yes,
well,
it's like
I wanted to ask about what sends mysteries off the rails. So, like, what makes it lose those cohesion? Like, did you, either of you, during your drafting processes, did you run into times where you're like, oh, shit, this is going off the rails. I need to rewrite this piece. Yes, that happens to all of us, right? Like, what sent it off the rails? What could our listeners, if they're writing a mystery, be like, I need to avoid doing this? Is there anything?
Not outlining.
So outlining is a must, is the
like
consensus.
We were talking about outlining, and then this was the last episode where it's like you outlined a bunch of stuff and then you just completely deviated from it. And there are so many times in a story, regardless of whether it's a mystery or whatever, where you're writing and then something just strikes you and you're like, that's fucking cool. You're just there's just an impulse as a creator where you're like, I have to go down this avenue, whether it benefits me or not. Sometimes you go down that avenue, you realize like, no, there's like a nasty monster down there. I'm going to turn back and go back to where I was. But sometimes there's avenues.
There's a delightful dragon named Felivox at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Turtis. Yeah. Little dragon turd. Sometimes you go down that avenue, that alleyway, and you're just like, oh wow, it opens up into a whole new plaza of opportunities and possibilities. And those are the moments where it's kind of scary as a writer, especially writing something that needs to have that stability, like a mystery, where you're just like, if I go down this path, I have to change a whole lot of shit. And go ahead.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like and that's the terror of like drafting. Like you will at some point in your draft encounter a better idea because you've been meditating for all these weeks and months. And of course, something like more interesting, more captivating, more immediate and urgent like touches you, and you have to pursue it. But it kind of messes everything up. And that's like and I think that the question of like when do you pursue it and when do you say nah is the great challenge of a mystery writer. Because sometimes that emergent idea is the kernel that defines that story, and sometimes it's the thing you waste 3 weeks on until you go, you know what? Actually, maybe not a pro wrestler. Maybe he wasn't a pro wrestler.
A podcast, but you know,
you should. I like the idea.
But yeah, that's the thing. It's obviously this is going off the rails as a writer. You have to understand when something's going to work, but you also can always use revision and rewriting as a way to refine the story into something that will work. Because if you put a book out there and people are like, this mystery is bonkers, like I have no idea what's going on, then that's the fault of the writer. There's so many things within that can send a story off the rails, but it's the author's job as the creator and as the sort of conductor of this train to make sure that when you put a story out there, you want it to be as intelligible and cohesive as you can make it, such that the reader never asks, where the fuck is this story going? You know what I mean? Because there are like so many minute things that could send.
I kind of like that. Don't you like when the reader's like, where are we going next?
There's like, okay, there's a controlled way to do that, and there's like an uncontrolled way to do that. If you're just like, we're just going off here just because, or it's like, how did they get like across this entire city in 5 minutes?
That's true.
Or things like that, you know, where it's like the logical consistency is broken in such a way where the reader is taken out of the story. I think those are the things that have to be fixed. Obviously, you can pull them along, but in a way that you, the author, know you are doing, not necessarily like you're just stumbling along in this madhouse, as well as the reader
like in
stumbling
a first
along.
draft, you're allowed to stumble around.
Yeah, 100%.
For the record.
Yeah.
You fix it in post.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, both of you guys have an interesting intersection for your stories where it's not just mystery, it's mystery blended with Josiah for you fantasy and Adrian for you sci-fi elements. Do you feel like blending those two genres gives you more room to play, or do you feel like it makes it harder to shroud the mystery, like, or either or? I mean, I know neither of you, to my knowledge at least, have written a traditional like contemporary mystery, but like from just your vibes.
Wouldn't you like to know? No.
No,
I haven't. Go ahead, Josiah.
I don't know. Like I feel like I'm like still figuring this stuff out. Like with Vexologist, I gave one of my characters basically a bottomless bag of tricks that could be used to solve any circumstance. If I were a poor writer, my goal with this bottomless bag of tricks is that everything she pulls out makes things worse. You know, so like one of the things that like
with the
I
expectation
had to
that it would hopefully alleviate
that would
or
be
solve
great
the situation.
Yes, and so they kind of learn to be a little hesitant to plumb the trove, because sometimes you pull out things that make the whole situation more difficult or onerous. And like that for me was one of the things I had to grapple with fantasy, because fantasy like offers, and magic, especially with magic and mystery, is difficult because magic can always be the answer. Like, oh, like where did he go? I'll use my magic. They're the footprints. We follow the footprints. Who killed him? I'll use my magic. Oh, it's him. You know, like, they can be very quickly short-circuited by the intervention of magic. And so I wanted to introduce a hamstrung magic, a magic that did have a lot of utility, but a magic that still also had a lot of there was an exchange. And so in my book, when fantasy, the magic assists the mystery, it is not without consequence. And sometimes the consequence is worse than where they began. And so, that's like kind of like trying to like put those two genres together, because, I was describing this to a friend originally. They were like, oh, so it's just, God the machine the entire time. Like, anytime there's a problem, you solve it with magic. And I was like, no, that doesn't sound very fun.
Actually,
like,
I don't want to do that. Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Well,
so.
we can talk off air, Josiah. There was a part in Hexologist where you introduced a magic where for a second I was like, ooh, this could be world-breaking or like story-breaking magic. And then you expertly hamstrung it in a way where I was like, oh, nope, He saved it. He fixed it. It's great. And I'll tell you what it was because I don't want to spoil it for our listeners.
Okay, well, yeah, tell me afterwards.
I will, because it was great. It was,
okay,
and that's
okay.
what I feel like you struck that balance really well, and I'm sure it was really hard to do that.
And I'm sure I messed it up a lot of other times, but I'm glad I got it right once. We'll take once. Yeah.
You
Noticeably
crushed
once,
it. Adrian, what about you with the sci-fi elements?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, it's not so sci-fi. Like, it's not far future sci-fi. It's feels like 1990s kind of tech. So in that sense, the elements that play into the mystery are very much hamstrung in the way that forensic science have been hamstrung in the past. It's like, how do forensic scientists process DNA when they don't have anything to pull from? And it's like, there's no fingerprints, there are no teeth, that kind of thing. So using a combination of like the crime itself and the constraints of the technology at that time to make it as believable in the context of the world as possible. But then I also have the added difficulty of there are mushroom-headed fungal people, and those people are interconnected, much in the way that fungi are in nature, by a network. They are connected to each other, not in the sense that like, they can read each other's minds unless they would open themselves up to it. So it's kind of like nature's social network in a way. So there is a lot of possibility for avenues opening up in the sense of something was revealed through the fungal network, but there are also ways in which things are opaque or things are concealed through the fungal network at the same time. And so that was kind of a constraint that I had to work with in order to make it logical within the context of this world and the context of this society and these fungal people, but also not make it a Deus Ex Machina where they can solve anything by just saying like, we're connected to the fungal network, and I'm just gonna like,
look, this guy over here witnessed it, and
like Jimmy Bob over across town like did something, blah blah blah. It's like, no, there's a lot of much in the way social media works now. There's the possibility to convey a false self. There's ways to obfuscate information. There are ways to blur your profile in a sense. I was
going to say, can I block someone from my fungal network?
Yeah. but those are the kinds of things that I had to implement in order to make it not
so it wasn't world
simple.
Breaking.
No, exactly. Yeah. So it's like the sci-fi elements are not so science fictional. It's kind of just like working with technology in order to make the crimes make sense, in order to make the clues make sense and the information make sense, and then working with the sort of more esoteric fungal network aspects of it to like with Josiah's Portalmento. It's like, don't make it the easy way out. Make it a possibility for an easy way out, but then introduce consequences as a way to up tension and keep the pacing going and provide different paths that the characters can go down that are a little bit unexpected and eventually more fun for the author and the reader.
That's great. I think that's great advice. And so I want to steal more advice, though, to wind down. What's some final advice that either of you, both of you have for any authors that are looking to get a little mysterious with their stories? With the shoulder wiggle. You got to do that.
Go, Josiah. Yeah. Shoulder wiggle, buddy. Go.
So some final advice for authors attempting it more mysterious. I do think the thing that is the most mysterious is the private fascination that you have not shared with the world. Maybe it's like your hummingbird feeder. Maybe it's like your fascination with stamps. Maybe it's like your love of coins, like your expertise on like the provenance of like coffee beans. I honestly think that you plumb your own obsessions, your own fascinations, and that is what enriches mysteries. I think that when we try to emulate too much, what we end up with is pretty mediocre porridge. Like you have each writer, every writer has an expertise that would be fascinating to a reader if poured correctly through a story, a mystery story, with a compelling, protagonist that would be unique and arresting. And so I think, like, yeah, you look at what you already love and know, because, my God, I love going to parties and talking to people who love kites or Ginsu knives or like darts or records or bowling shoes or whatever it is. Like we've all met these people, and you're like, oh, if you wrote a mystery, it would be unique.
I'm going to build off of yours because I think, especially if you're writing your first mystery, don't overcomplicate it. Try to keep it more simplistic and rooted in a solid foundation, because the more you overcomplicate it, the more difficult it's going to be for you as a writer to fit the pieces together, and more opportunities for you to muddle things up when a reader eventually gets their eyes on it. And at the same time, the things that Josiah is talking about, those are the details that add complexity to a mystery. You don't need to make the mystery itself so complex. You make the characters complex, you make the world complex, you make the interactions complex, and the little details complex. And those are the things that are going to build up and accrue in the reader's mind. And as a puppeteer, sometimes it effectively distracts them from the things that you don't want them to see. Sometimes it leads them in directions that you want them to go down, because you know that the truth is in another direction. And so it's a really effective way to sort of play with the reader's head, because not only are you creating more engaging characters and more engaging worlds and more engaging stories, but at the same time, you're able to manipulate them in ways that for you as a writer are more fun, and for the reader, when they get to the end and they fit all the pieces together and realize, oh shit. It's like what we talked about with the Parna, that moment, that oh shit moment where you realize, oh, this thing was there, that person did this,
right?
And they connect the pieces.
All there all
exactly.
along. Yeah.
And those are the kinds of things that I think really make a book memorable for people. And so if you can sell them on the minute details that build up and create something more believable and more fascinating, all the while keeping your mystery, really cohesive, I think that's kind of like the winning combination for me. Because if you just make things too complicated, nobody likes complicated shit. In no situation, It's like we like reading
a Christopher Nolan movie. A Christopher Nolan movie at this point is like, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
Like Dunkirk was kind of like, okay, it's a World War II movie and I can actually follow this. But then like I watched what was it? Tenet.
Yes. Tenet's the one I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I was like, cool, you like shot a bunch of this shit and rewound it. Like I'm just like a bit confused here. And if that confusion sets in,
people lose interest. Yeah. Well, that's like I work in marketing for my day job, and we always say a confused mind always says no, right? So that's why it's for making marketing copy clear, but it works for books too, right? Confused mind, they're gonna shut it. I'm like, nope.
Yeah, because it's like the attention span that people have. Obviously, their attention span is different for different things, but if you can't grab them, then you're gonna lose them. I just got sassy there, and Josiah bobbed his head.
I liked it. Oh yeah,
we're here for it. It's getting late. We're getting sassy. It's a vibe.
It's getting sassy. Man.
This is the latest I've been up in 2 years.
Wow,
I'm honored that you're staying up for us.
PM. Like I don't even know who you people are. You know what? This is a dream. This is a fever dream.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, well, let's close out our fever dream.
It's a hallucinogen.
No. We can keep going, but like it's just going to get weirder.
It's just going to get weirder. I like weirdness. Well, let's get some weird recommendations. Like, let's get some rapid fire recommendations for some of our favorite mysteries to close things out.
Okay.
So, Adrian, do you want to kick us off?
I already brought up 7 in my traumatized childhood.
Not a date movie.
Not a date movie.
I will do a couple of books.
Yeah.
Connie Willis, the Doomsday Book, and To Say Nothing to the Dog. Both of those, like they they're mysteries, but they're humorous and they are time, like, meddling. They're beautiful. They're wonderfully written. So Connie Willis, Doomsday Book, To Say Nothing of the Dog. The other one I was going to recommend was The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton, which is kind of like going old school, but I would recommend it for people who enjoy kind of like fantasy gumshoe,
Okay.
with a little bit of absurdity. The Cartographers by Kyung Shepard is the most recent one that I've really enjoyed. And so I would recommend people check that out as well.
Yeah.
Love
fantastic.
it. Those are great.
I second The Cartographers. Excellent book. Okay, so I mentioned 7, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. It is not
Great.
it is not outwardly a mystery, but it is framed like a mystery. Going into Area X, this alien bubble that has consumed a part of the earth, and just the way in which its mysteries unfold, the way in which its character and the investigation that they're going, which is so personal. The way that this biologist is plunging into the depths of this strange alien environment and being,
for me,
consumed.
that's like a 10 out of 10 book. That's beautiful.
It is.
It's a beautiful. It's like poetry.
Some of the most beautiful prose. This is like tickling Josiah's poetry, sort of.
You're finding
I read that
to hold in
all
your heart.
on one train ride, and it's still like it is with me. It was just magnificent.
But that whole trilogy, the Southern Reach trilogy, fantastic.
Yes.
True Detective, the first season is, if we are speaking mood and atmosphere and setting, it is second to none. The best representation of mystery mood on television, period. First season of that show with Matthew McConaughey is brilliant. And Woody Harrelson as well. Third season is also very good.
It is.
The last one I have is Blade Runner, which for my sci-fi aficionado at heart, the book that it's based on, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, is weird. And Philip K. Dick is like my acid baby when it comes to like
I love him.
the most weird science fiction that ever existed. But Blade Runner, again, setting and mood and character is so brilliantly done, and such an evocative movie with such amazing dialogue and great character work across the board, from the bad guys and the moral ambiguity of them to the protagonists like Rick Deckard, and everything is just...
And what he does with technology, like that's what I can't do. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, that movie is perfection. Okay, MJ, what you got?
Okay, so I only have a few. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Ninth House. If you guys have read it, it's Lee Bardugo, Dark Academia. That was really good. It's really dark. I would recommend people check trigger warnings before reading it. But it was, I really enjoyed that one. I have Altered Carbon on my list. Season 1 of the Netflix adaptation specifically. Season 2 was okay. Season 1 was very good.
Season 2 wasn't a mystery as much as
not as much as season 1. Season 1 is a straight up mystery. The book I won't speak of because it is, I don't like how he describes women in the book. So whatever, it's fine.
But the adaptation was great.
Season 1 of the show,
the
adaptation was great. And if you've watched the show and you love the character of Poe, he's not in the book. So like,
don't even bother.
Anyways, I mean, if you liked the book, I'm not hating it. Just like personally, I won't put my stamp of recommendation on the book, but I would on the show. Knives Out, the movie that everybody loved, right? I feel like that was, is good. And then my last one is kind of a fun one that I don't know if either of you are going to have any idea what I'm talking about. It is one episode of the She-Ra reboot.
Okay.
It's called Mermysteries. And in this episode, Mermista, one of the princesses, reveals that she's like super into like detective and like murder mystery stories. And in that same episode, they have to like root out who is the like betrayer of their like princess group. And it's very much a closed room mystery.
Yeah.
And it's just funny and it's good. Just watch She-Ra Princesses of Power in general. It's good. But
That sounds great though.
but that's a great
I'm digging it.
episode and it's really cute and I like it. So there you go.
I'm sold. I'm
Yeah.
sold. That's great.
Like I love when cartoons like animated shows get into that, like Adventure Time. Whenever Adventure Time did like a mystery episode, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm all in on this, man.
Yeah,
I love it.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? Because then they get like as tropey as possible,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
in the most like tongue-in-cheek way. It's so good. But yeah, that's my last track.
Beautiful.
I love it.
All right, man. Great note to end on, MJ. Just like mermaids on the mind.
Mermaids on the mind. Yeah.
Mermaids on the
Gotta
mind,
love
baby.
mermaid stuff.
All right, well, that's it for this mini masterclass and our two-parter with Josiah Bancroft. Thank you, buddy, for helping us to solve this writerly investigation. I appreciate you teaming up with me. I don't know who's the Sherlock or who's the Watson, but we'll let
I feel like I was the
we'll let
Watson.
listeners decide. We'll let them
There you
decide.
go.
As well, for anyone who contributes to our Patreon at $10 or more a month, there will be an exclusive reading by Josiah from The Hexologist, which is out today. So go pick it up and go support this amazing man and his work. Now, good sir, where can people find you online?
You can find me by probably like releasing
Snail
a
mail.
pigeon out the window. Like if it's a really smart. No, I'm sometimes on Instagram at Bancroft Josiah. I am on Patreon, Josiah Bancroft, and I am nowhere else right now because I'm mysterious.
Yes.
I
And we love that
I'm
mystery. That's
very
what it's all
jealous
about.
of that, to be
Yeah.
honest.
All right. You can also follow SFF Addicts on Instagram, X, and Threads and all that shit at sffaddictspod, or you can follow me at Adrian M. Gibson. MJ, what about you?
Yep, I'm across all the socials at MJ Kuhn Books, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I will always call it Twitter. And it's Twitter forever. And you can just follow me at mjkuhn.com as well. Find all my links there.
And satiate your thieving desires with Among Thieves and its sequel.
Oh yeah.
Thick
Oh,
as
and also
Thieves.
if you like free stuff, if you sign up for my
Yeah.
newsletter on my website, you get my free novelette. So
Yeah.
Oh,
there you
Boom,
go.
boom.
that's
And I
nice.
formatted it because we're
Free
teaming
books.
up.
Yeah, Adrian helped me format it. It's all pretty.
Yeah, we
So
got
there you
that
go.
shit. Yeah.
Ooh.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Now, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.